January 8th, 2026, Buddha Dhamma, chapter 11.8, page 1151. Review of the different forms of sukha, of happiness. Here is a summary of the various stages of kinds of happiness. First, I'm going to read out the name in Pali language, and then we'll give the definitions. The summary of various stages of kinds of happiness, sukha. Veta yita sukha. This is happiness as sensation, happiness involving the enjoyment of sense objects, sense pleasure, kama sukha. Happiness stemming from the five cores of sensuality, kama guna. Happiness derived from the five forms of sense of contact, basa. Then we have jhana sukha, happiness of the fruit of jhana. This is concentration, meditation, absorption, either of the fine material or the formless jhanas. Happiness associated with the four fine material jhanas, and the happiness associated with the four immaterial jhanas. This is meditation, absorption. Avetaita sukha. This is the opposite. Happiness that is not a sensation. Happiness not involved in contact with sense objects. Nirota samapati sukha. Happiness connected to the attachment or the attainment of cessation. For example, dwelling in the cessation of perception and feeling. Sanya veta yita nirota. This above classification of sukha, happiness accords with the 10 stages of happiness described earlier. Following is an alternative threefold classification of happiness, which is similar to the preceding one, yet is slightly more flexible or non-specific. We have kama sukha, sense pleasure. Jhana sukha, happiness of jhana, concentration, meditation, absorption, either the fine material or the immaterial. And then we have nibbita sukha, happiness of nibbita. The individuals who experience these three kinds of sukha are as follows. Sense pleasure is enjoyed by unawakened mundane beings and by unawakened beings belonging to the stage of sotapanna and anagami. So for the stage of the stream enterer and the once returner. Now it is good to note here that including the devas and the six sense spheres, kama vacha saga, a celestial abodes. Second one is happiness of jhana, concentration, meditation, absorption, either the fine material or the immaterial states of attainment through concentration. It's accessed by unawakened beings and by awakened beings at every stage, from the stream enterer, the sotapanna, up to the arahats, the non-returners, especially those who have previously developed a specific level of jhana, of concentration. Now, the note here says that's including all Brahma gods, the 16 kinds of fine material Brahmas, and the four kinds of immaterial Brahmas. The third is happiness of nibbita. It's accessed by awakened beings at every stage, from sotapanna, stream enterers, up to arihats. If one is referring to the happiness of fruitation attainments, however, this is accessible to those individuals who have reached the specific stage of awakening. And if one is referring to the happiness of the attainment of cessation, then this is accessible only to the non-returners and arihats who have previously reached the 8th concentration of attainments. A classification according to different types of individual appears this way. Unawakened beings enjoy sense pleasures and may experience the happiness of jhana. Awakened beings at the stage of stream entry and once returning experience sense pleasure, the happiness of jhana, and the happiness of nipita, in the form of happiness of fruition attainment. And third, awakened beings at the stage of non-returning and arihatship experience the happiness of jhana and the happiness of nipita, both in the form of happiness and fruition attainment. And if they have reached the 8 concentration attainments, in the form of happiness of attainment of sensation. Although Buddhism does not encourage people to act solely for the sake of attaining happiness, it is constantly acknowledged the truth that happiness is the essential aspect of human life and gives meaning to the Dhamma practice. One can say that it is an anchor and support for Dhamma practice. One can say that it is an anchor and support regardless of whether one is focusing on the Dhamma practice in particular or in human conduct in general. The happiness here is the basic happiness inherent in people's minds, which can contact by themselves at any time that they are ready. They need not rely on contact with objects in the outside world. So basically, it's internal mechanism. This happiness brings a degree of independence to one's life. The vital importance of happiness in Dhamma practice has been explained above. It is good to know in particular that a Dhamma practitioner who has not yet experienced a deeper happiness independent of sense objects cannot yet be assured that he or she won't return to seek out sense pleasures. Even as a renunciant, if one has not yet experienced this profound non-material happiness, one is not yet safe. The mental defilements, kilesas, the asavas, can overwhelm the mind, leading one to relinquish this holy life. Gautama Buddha encouraged unawakened people to develop this internal non-material happiness. Besides increasing one's degree of happiness and enhancing the quality of one's life, this internal happiness provides an escape from tanha, the craving, which leads to endless agitation and heightened problems, both personal and social. It is fair to say that human beings are not willing to take an interest in to get to know the non-material happiness. The unrestrained rush for sense pleasures will create a superficial kind of life full of distress, anxiety, boredom, grief, and misery. Moreover, it will be accompanied by competitiveness and mutual exploitation until people lead themselves and the entire world to utter annihilation. Given the ordinary unawakened people who are immersed in the pursuit of sense pleasure need to experience an inner happiness, it is twice as important that those people who determine to distance themselves from or to renounce sense pleasures have access to such happiness. This is even more true for those individuals who go forth as renunciants, who engage in the higher spiritual practice, or who devote their lives to some ideal. If they're unable to access such internal happiness, their renunciation or devotion will fail to have a stable protection. It is likely that they will fall away from their ideal and return to unwholesome mode of living. In short, if one lives a life of renunciation, one must be happy with renunciation. If one devotes oneself to an ideal, one must be happy about their life of devotion. In a wider context, if we are unsuccessful at helping people to recognize and appreciate this internal happiness, the tanha, the craving for sense pleasure, kama guna, will overwhelm the human race. It will be the final factor in the determining the fate of the world, regardless of the undertakings by religious leaders and moral philosophers.